The first time you come to North Dakota, you're struck by the geometric beauty of a cultivated landscape. Few people live here, less than 10 per square mile. Almost everyone is here because they want to be. And North Dakotans have learned to live with isolation, with the extremes of hard weather and wind. Something more than space gives North Dakota the lowest rate of violent crime, the lowest divorce rate, and some of the most honest taxpayers in the country.
There is a pride at being able to live in the kinds of conditions that North Dakota presents us, in living in a land of extreme weather conditions.
Well, I don't think there's a misconception, because it is true. It's cold up here in the wintertime, and fortunate or not fortunate, it's been that way in all of history.
Self-sufficiency, born of the struggle to survive in a remote but beautiful land. That's what marks the people of North Dakota. They've had to overcome isolation and wild extremes of weather, as you'll see here now on Portrait of America.
Portrait of America is brought to you by Biz, the all-fabric bleach with energized cleaners that gets out ground-in muddy dirt. Biz Bleach gives you a clean whitewash. Lewis Rich and the whole family of Lewis Rich turkey products. Kellogg's Crispix, the cereal with corn on one side and rice on the other. Only Crispix is crispy ×2. And by Cable News Network and CNN Headline News.
You know, using Biz Bleach is like having clean clothes insurance. That confident feeling my laundry will come out right. Cherry pie stains, no problem. Muddy dirt, and gravy stains, bye-bye. Because Biz Bleach is great at getting out many tough food stains. See, the gravy stain's gone. And Biz Bleach is better at removing muddy dirt than any other leading dry bleach. So for that confident feeling, get clean clothes insurance with Biz Bleach.
Where are the boys?
They're playing ball, Grandpa.
In this heat? When I was a boy, I'd find some shade and share some lemonade with a pretty girl. Ah, the good old-fashioned taste of country time.
Grandpa, how did you find the pretty girls?
I just knew where to look. Country Time drink mix, and now new sugar-free Country Time.
Tastes like that good old-fashioned lemonade.
I'll never understand how they did this.
Kellogg's Crispix is crispy ×2.
Maybe, then again, no.
Crispix is crispy ×2.
Only Crispix cereal holds the crunch of corn on one side, the crackle of rice on the other. In some wonderful way, Kellogg's doubled what crisp used to be.
Very clever, those Kellogg's.
Only Crispix is crispy ×2.
Flowers and candy, champagne and candlelight dinners for two. Romance is back in style. In a CNN special report, Romance Revival, you'll see how love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. Don't miss this special look at love in the 80s, today at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
Be watching when America's team blast away at the San Francisco Giants. Today, 2:05 Eastern on Superstation WTBS.
Remoteness made North Dakota one of the last states in the country to be settled. Now, to understand that, you have to understand how far away North Dakota really is, and how cold, how dry. The town of Rugby is the geographical center of North America. In other words, Rugby is further away from the oceans than any other place on the entire continent. It took the railroads to conquer this isolation. The Iron Horse brought people in from the east and beyond. In the 1870s, they came through Minnesota, crossed the Red River into the Dakota territories to farm the eastern lowlands and the high plains. The most adventurous trekked on west into the Dakota Badlands. But wherever people settled, they had to shape their lives around the extremes of this tough land. When most people think of North Dakota, if they think of it at all, it has something to do with coldness, with being far, far away. It is, as native son Eric Severide once said, a blank spot on the nation's consciousness. But for the people who live in this prairie state, it's very real, and it takes a certain attitude to live here. An attitude neatly summed up by this sign painted on the side of a bank in the tiny North Dakota town of Cheyenne. That enduring faith came with the pioneer families. The immigrants from the steppes of Russia also brought a custom of marking their graves with spirits of iron. Iron crosses which endure like the state and its people. These Germans, Hungarians, Ukrainians, and Poles were able to withstand the isolation and the extreme climate, temperature swings of 170 degrees in the same year. 60 below zero in the harshest winter, and then 110 above the next summer. There is a beauty here in the extremes of North Dakota, and it held the immigrants who made this prairie a part of America. The railroad was here before the state. Starting in 1872, the Northern Pacific built its way across the Dakota Territory, aided by the largest federal land grant ever awarded. In return for laying the tracks, the railroad was given every other square mile of land within 20 miles of the line. The railroad then sold the land to immigrants. Towns were created every 7 miles along the track, regardless of the lay of the land, because the railroad thought that's the way it should be. The Great Plains could not support every part of the railroad's vision, and today many of those communities planned for the immigrants lie hidden in fields of wheat. Railroads advertised heavily throughout Europe for hearty souls willing to pay their life savings for a journey that took weeks.
It was possible, for example, to buy a ticket in Germany, Bremen to Bismarck, and you bought a steamship ticket from Bremen to New York and a railroad ticket to Bismarck. And
Mike Jacobs is the editor of the Grand Forks Herald. He grew up in North Dakota and went to the university in Grand Forks.
They named Bismarck, in fact, in order to attract German immigrants. And these immigrants were of different religions, and the railroads consciously put settlements of German Catholics in one place and German Congregationalists in the next place, and perhaps Norwegian Lutherans in the next place, so that as you go across the state, and this is especially true along the Northern Pacific, there's a definite pattern of settlement, Catholic, Protestant, as you go from town to town in the western part of the state. The railroad did that.
In the Cathedral of the Prairie in Warsaw, North Dakota, you can still hear hymns sung in Polish on every other Sunday.
to jest bowiem kielich krwi mojej, nowego i wiecznego przymierza, która za was i za wielu będzie wylana na opuszczenie grzechów, to czyńcie na moją pamiątkę.
The immigrants from Europe were not the first to come to North Dakota. Earlier in the 17th century, Sioux Indians came to the Dakota Plains, drawn by game which roamed over this land, deer, antelope, and buffalo once so numerous as to cloud the horizon. Like the white men who followed 2 centuries later, the Indians had to adjust to a new way of life as they moved across the open prairie and into the Badlands.
And this was Pahasapa. This was the holy ground. Certainly because of the extraordinary wrenching of the earth that you see there. Woods, to this openness, to that wrenching, they said, ah, something's done this. This is sacred ground. Now, many farmers here and many people who live here feel that. This is sacred ground. We're under the mercy of extraordinary forces. Take account of them or you won't last long.
The Badlands on the western border of the state were so named by French explorers because they were difficult to cross. 65 million years of wind and rain has left deep gullies. The outcroppings of red scoria clay were formed by the intense heat of underground coal fires still burning after thousands of years. This unique terrain provided shelter for much wildlife, including the buffalo. And it was the buffalo hunting that first attracted Teddy Roosevelt to the Badlands. He came in 1883 after the tragic death of both his mother and wife on the same night. Teddy lived in this small cabin and tried to build a cattle enterprise while he recovered. He found himself here.
I have a little idea that out here he wanted to be alone and find out if he was going to be a man, if there was a reason for him to live, if there was ability in the world that he didn't have, and how could he acquire some so that he could be a part of society, a part of what's going on. I think Teddy found more here than physical health. I really do.
Harold Schaefer has devoted his life to preserving the memory of Teddy Roosevelt and restoring the town of Medora.
Well, we have a saying, you can walk the same land he walked, you can see the same things he saw. It hasn't been an industrial area and polluted with buildings and smokestacks. This is still country and ranching country.
The ranching began after 1881 when the railroad opened up the Badlands and rumors spread back east of endless open cattle range. The railroad brought men like the Marquis de Morez with grand schemes for the new territory. This young French aristocrat named the town of Medora for his wife and erected a 28-room mansion. Marquis had the novel idea of putting a meat-packing plant in the heart of the cattle range. The awful blue winter of 1886 ruined the enterprises of the Marquis and Roosevelt in the Badlands. The winter of the blue snow was the worst in frontier history, and the people of Medora had to board up their windows to keep out the starving cattle. Despite the defeat Roosevelt suffered here, he always felt indebted to North Dakota.
Teddy Roosevelt, of course, said if it wouldn't have been for my life in North Dakota, I'd never been president. Now, that's interesting because Johnson didn't say that about Texas, and Kennedy didn't say it about Massachusetts, and no other president in history has ever said it about a place where they resided or a place where they were born.
Love for the buffalo in North Dakota are only a few of the traits Harold Schaefer has in common with Teddy Roosevelt. Harold has been able to support Medora because he made a fortune with his gold-sealed company selling household products like glass wax and Mr. Bubble.
I think it was easier to build a national business out of North Dakota because I had an identity. And when I met people in Los Angeles or New York and I said I was from North Dakota, it was an identity when I went back into their office a year later or 6 months later, which the normal person don't get. That's pleasure that just happened because I came from North Dakota and people weren't expecting business people to come from North Dakota and try to sell them something.
Where does new Kellogg's Apple Raisin Crisp cereal get its homemade taste?
Homemade taste?
Does Apple Raisin Crisp get its homemade taste from apples like Grandma baked?
Tastes like my recipe.
Does Apple Raisin Crisp get its homemade taste from the raisins that sweeten its taste?
I love raisins.
Do the big crisp flakes with the apples baked on bring on that crunchy taste?
Apples baked on the flakes.
Where does new Apple Raisin Crisp get its delicious homemade taste?
Only from Kellogg's.
Which oil makes the best tasting salad dressing? Only Crisco oil.
You can blend a better tasting dressing.
Crisco oil blends better. Other oils separate quickly, but Crisco oil stays blended longer.
Tastes a lot of flavor.
So salads aren't too oily or vinegary.
Munch, munch, munch.
With Crisco oil, you get tastier, livelier salads with delicious flavor in every bite.
Blend a better dressing, toss a better salad, taste a lot of flavor.
Your salads will taste better with Crisco oil.
Munch, munch, munch.
The issue at hand is Jell-O pudding pops. Your vote, Ohio.
Ohio votes chocolate, sir.
Texas.
Creamy smooth chocolate vanilla swirl, Mr. Speaker.
Jell-O brand pudding pops, made with the goodness of real Jell-O pudding.
New York.
We vote chocolate caramel swirl, sir.
A delicious response. All in flavor.
Yay, yum!
Jell-O pudding pops, the great taste that's popping up everywhere.
They have no love.
You want sensation. The uglier, the better.
Only lust. No reality.
What's the wildest thing you've ever done?
I was hoping I hadn't done it yet.
Only fantasy. No anger.
I just want a woman who's there when I need her.
Only passion.
You are the meanest, cruelest, most loathsome thing I've ever met.
Carol Baker, George Papard, The Carpetbaggers, Monday.
Farming is the North Dakota way of life. An incredible 95% of the surface of North Dakota is devoted to agriculture, more than any other state in the nation. More durum wheat, more sunflowers, more flax, more barley is grown in North Dakota than any other state. There is a geometric eloquence to the land. These vistas extend for miles across the state and are a source of satisfaction for the farmers and a source of inspiration to some artists.
Everything's very geometric. And I guess I started to notice that...
Jackie McElroy is a silkscreen artist living in Grand Forks. She's spent time on the land, and her work reflects what she sees in North Dakota.
And whatnot, except that the government came out here and surveyed along mile-square section lines, and everything runs in straight lines. All the roads, with very few exceptions. If they're following a creek bed, that's one thing, but if they're, you know, county section roads are all perfectly straight. They run north, south, east, west. The farmers line up their grain bins. I get a real kick out of that because they have to be out there with a transit to get them in as straight as they are. And they'll line those things up so that they don't vary a half an inch. If you fly over North Dakota from the east part toward Montana, you'll see all the grain, all the fields perfectly rectilinear and stuff until you start getting out of the valley, and then you get a little more topography and things will start changing. But they still impose that flat north, south, east, west grid on everything. And the farther west they go, the harder it gets to do that. And finally, by the time you get to the Montana border, they just give up.
Jackie came to North Dakota from the Rocky Mountains in Montana. It was unsettling, she said, to be able to stand in one place and see the contour of the land.
I must say that I really basically didn't like the area when I first came here. I thought it was visually just desolate.
But she was forced out into the countryside by her Irish setter, Finnegan, who did love the land, at least being able to romp at will. While Finnegan ran, Jackie took hundreds of photographs and began to see the subtle beauty.
I started to pay attention to the way the light changed things, and I really finally decided that North Dakota, this end of North Dakota, was surprisingly beautiful. The color of it, anyway. And I think I kind of enchanted by the flat.
In a whimsical way, what she saw gradually took shape in her silk screens, fanciful images of farmers' fields and grain elevators.
To be able to actually say I really legitimately like this landscape is a great triumph.
I think anyone first coming into North Dakota is not going to notice the colors at all. In fact, I haven't noticed some colors until I've lived here for 4 years.
Another voice in North Dakota who has spent time noticing the land is author Larry Wywoody. After success in New York as a novelist, Larry returned to his home state.
In the fall particularly, there are about over 100 shades of brown and violet that you'll see across the pastures and in some of the stubble fields. Then there are yellows that I've seen only in some late 19th, early 20th century French paintings. There are greens and shades of green that exist nowhere else, and contiguously in one area of grass or areas of grasses. You can see them because the sunlight is so clear, unpolluted, brilliant, and in this northern latitude hangs at a different angle, I think, than on either coast. There are outside forces at work on everyone here. Nature. There is what the natives refer to simply as weather, as though a stroke of weather, as though a stroke of bad luck. And every farmer, everyone who works with the land, realizes that he's not autonomous.
One of Larry's closest neighbors is Dorrance Einkamp. Dorrance has no real use for horses on his farm, but he loves the animals. Working with them helps him to escape the pressures that a farmer can have.
Well, farming is a real stress game. You really get things built up inside of you. And when I can get on my saddle horse or get in the buggy like this and go for a ride, that's my way of relaxing. There's a lot of bills to pay and very little money to do it with. And it's real hard work. And all it takes is one little thing, like a hailstorm, to ruin a whole year's work. The weather can make or break your crop for you. Gets too hot at the wrong time, you can burn the crop up, or like I said, hail. If you get hail out, you're done. Growing up, my dad, he wasn't much of a livestock man, and I liked horses, and now I guess I'm making up for them years that I didn't have any. But this, for me, this is kind of a winter hobby, breaking these horses. I don't usually break them over summer. Well, you start them out slow. I usually get them used to the saddle, and then when I think they're ready, I climb in. And usually after about 4 or 5 days, I'm riding them around. Once in a while, I get surprised. I've had a few pretty rough landings. I had a stud for a guy up in Medora. He pasted me up against the corral about 3 times. I was about ready to give up on him, but I finally did get him broke. To me, it's an accomplishment. When I finish a horse, I feel pretty good about it. Well, it's just something I like to do, I guess. I don't know. Life is so short the way it is, a guy should do a little bit of what he likes. Because if I did it for the money, I'd be awful poor, I tell you. Well, the winter's okay if it don't get too cold, but fall is the best. When the work is done and the ground and the air isn't too cold yet. The hard work is coming to an end, and there's a little time for doing things that you want to do. Things beside farming.
I'm 32 years old, and I love Kellogg's Frosted Flakes.
Brave adults are coming forward to challenge the notion that Frosted Flakes is just a kid's cereal.
I know there's a tiger in the box. I like the taste, okay?
Because you love them as a kid doesn't mean you can't love them as an adult.
One day, our neighbors saw the package on the table.
And we don't even have children.
With that extra crunch in milk, that frosting just right, that taste as great as ever.
Well, they've always been my favorite, so dig in. Frosted Flakes have the taste adults have grown to love. They're great.
After 18 holes on a hot afternoon, you probably think I'd shower with a deodorant soap. Not a chance. I'm Keith Fergus, and I made a break from deodorant soaps. A clean break with Ivory. Look inside. Ivory's a basic, natural soap, and I like that. What I don't like are soaps that cover up clean with deodorants or heavy perfumes. I don't want that stuff all over me. With Ivory, I feel like there's nothing on me but clean. I can feel it. I can smell it. I call that an honest clean.
Make a clean break with Ivory. No soap can get you cleaner.
Running free, playing free. Kids are going sugar-free. One sugar-free for kids.
It's the only sugar-free for my kids. Pre-sweetened with a natural-tasting sweetener.
Outstanding.
At about half the price of soda with vitamin C, it's the one I like best. The one they like best.
It's the one sugar-free. Sugar-free for kids.
Kool-Aid brand sugar-free soft drink mix.
Stay up to date with CNN Sports Late Night. You'll get all the highlights of the day's Olympic action. And with special call-in numbers, you can question the Olympians of the day and the stars of tomorrow. So stay in tune with the Summer Games. Stay in tune with Sports Late Night, only on CNN, Cable News Network.
Tonight,
I'd like to address this meeting of the Hopper Valley PTA.
the folks from Harbor Valley thought they could handle her.
The chair denies.
Let her speak. Boy, were they wrong.
What you got in your mind?
I'd like to hear, too.
I am here to call a few kettles black.
See Barbara Eaton sock it to the Harbor Valley PTA. Tonight at 8:05 Eastern Time on Superstation WTBS.
There's a real sense of being able to accomplish things in North Dakota. From the very beginning, her settlers were determined to become self-sufficient, free of control from such outside forces as grain merchants and the railroads. Coping with their remote location and harsh climate has led to a history of unique solutions and to a feeling of really being able to accomplish things, and to something of a reputation as agrarian radicals, even prairie socialists. If you walk into many motels in Fargo, Grand Forks, or Bismarck, you'll find a solution that could apply to one problem anywhere. The problem was how to raise money for charity. The solution was simple and effective. The state legislature authorized gambling under two conditions. The largest bet would be $2, and the profits must go to charity. In this case, North Dakota's Prairie Public Television.
People that just come into the Holiday Inn walk past the casino and look in, and wow, there's blackjack in North Dakota? They come up here and they find out it's $2 limit, and they're kind of depressed for a while. Like, oh, I can't win money, and then they end up having a lot more fun. They don't want to go to Vegas anymore. You're not going to find gambling anywhere else in the world like you got right here. It's fact.
Dennis Falk manages Prairie Public Television. He's seen the difference $2 bets can make.
We got started in charitable gaming when we were experiencing some very severe federal cutbacks in funding for public television. And this new source of revenue has really kept us from having to make very, very severe cutbacks. If we had not had charitable gaming income, we would have had to cut back massively on the amount of airtime that we have, on the local programming we do, on the acquisitions we have. We certainly wouldn't be the operation we are today.
North Dakotans have always looked for solutions. Tough immigrants brought with them a notion that they could make the Great Plains environment adjust to the way of life they knew back home, even though few had faced conditions like North Dakota. Journalist Mike Jacobs.
You have to remember, North Dakota was one of the last states in the nation to be settled. And especially this is true in the western part of the state. And a lot of people who came here had failed elsewhere. They were people who had not made it in Minnesota or Ohio or Iowa or wherever, Germany or Russia. And they came here with an expectation that however bad it was going to be better than what they left. And so they've had a real determination to make sure that's true. I'm interested in place names, and there's a town in North Dakota named Cando, C-A-N-D-O. And the town was named because the people there believed that they could do it, and so they named their town Cando. And I think that sort of expresses the spirit that the pioneers brought with them.
Cando's faith in their ability to devise answers brought the town the first complete pasta plant in the United States. Wheat goes in one side and pasta comes out the other. The finest durum wheat in the world for making pasta is grown in North Dakota. And Cando is the heart of the Durham Triangle, as they call it.
That's beautiful, #1 hard ham of Durham.
Durum is delivered throughout the year by local farmers directly to the pasta plant. The durum is processed into semolina flour, sifted and mixed into dough, and rolled, cut, and dried into every imaginable form of pasta. Producing the final product here employs Cando people and boosts the isolated economy. The finished product leaves in boxes labeled Noodles by Leonardo. But it wasn't just the can-do spirit that built this plant, as Gene Nichols explains.
It was probably a little bit of luck. It was also combined with having the ability of a state-owned bank, the Bank of North Dakota, to finance it. If we wouldn't have had the Bank of North Dakota to finance the major portion of this project, the project never would have been built.
The Bank of North Dakota is the only state-owned bank in the United States. Pure prairie socialism that now makes a profit every year. Thousands of students owe their education to loans from this bank, which began in the 1920s as a project of the Nonpartisan League, a populist farmers movement that controlled the state for a short time. Other economic solutions have been sought in North Dakota. Beginning in the 1970s, energy development was seen by many as a way to overcome dependence on agriculture. This massive coal gasification plant cost $2 billion. It's an experiment for the future, when other gas may not be available. Built right next to the strip mines that feed it, the plant will produce gas from lignite coal, but at a price at least 3 times that of natural gas. Not a profitable venture by anyone's accounting. Energy development has followed the pattern of North Dakota's attempts to find solutions, Herculean efforts that sometimes are criticized for going too far. The too much mistake, as the state's historian Elwin Robinson calls it, trying to do too much with too few resources too quickly. The Garrison Diversion Project is another case in point. The idea goes back decades in North Dakota and is based on the need for more water for crops and cities in the eastern part of the state. North Dakotans hope to defy the basic lay of the land and build a series of interconnected canals and reservoirs hundreds of miles to deliver Missouri River water to the east. North Dakotans have an enduring faith that despite whatever problems their isolated and extreme environment creates, they will survive and prosper. Sometimes they may go too far in their efforts, but one problem which no one will debate is medical emergencies in remote locations. Accidents, heart attacks, and other threats to life where minutes and seconds make all the difference are dealt with quickly by one of the most advanced helicopter evacuation projects in the country. Two Bismarck hospitals joined forces to provide personnel and facilities. A jet helicopter carrying a doctor and a nurse takes off from Bismarck for a direct flight to the scene of a farm accident. Directions are critical in this vast terrain. Finding a particular farm can be a nightmare from the air. But by coordinating with the local ground ambulance crew by radio, the Air Care helicopter finds this remote family farm near the small town of Flasher. When someone is hurt in the country by a piece of farm machinery, the volunteer ambulance crew can only do so much. But the doctor and nurse from Bismarck can stabilize the victim and connect life support and monitoring systems which will relay information back to the emergency room in Bismarck from on board the helicopter.
Okay, we're going to move you into the helicopter here in just a second, all right?
It's at least a 90-minute drive from Flasher to Bismarck, but no more than 20 minutes by air.
Marty, could you check the pressure again? I'm going to check his pupils here. George, can you look up the ceiling for me? Okay, I'm going to shine a little light there on it. That's it.
Bismarck, the state capital, is a town of barely more than 40,000 people. In North Dakota, that's a big city. And Bismarck serves the needs of a large part of the center of the state. Technology is here. Technology that will save many lives. People in North Dakota have a way of finding solutions to their circumstances. There's always a pride in trying, and in this case, in succeeding.
Healthy teeth and gums are important to all of us. Johnson & Johnson is proud to announce that Reach Toothbrush, Johnson & Johnson Dental Floss, and Act Fluoride Rinse have been professionally recognized by the American Dental Association.
I teach aerobics, so I have to take good care of myself. I jog, watch what I eat, and I'm just as careful about the pain reliever I use. That's why I take Tylenol. I was first given Tylenol in the hospital. It worked great without bothering my stomach like aspirin did. So happens, Tylenol's the pain reliever hospitals use most. I can't think of a better reason to trust Tylenol.
For relief you can trust. Trust Tylenol. Hospitals do. Tylenol in regular and extra strength. And now Tylenol introduces easy-to-swallow extra-strength caplets. New caplets are specially coated and shaped, so they're easy to swallow. Try new easy-to-swallow caplets from extra-strength Tylenol.
This tumble crew has a plan, and they begin by digging into those 2 scoops in every Kellogg's pack. 2 scoops, keep them coming back for 2 scoops of plump, juicy raisins in Kellogg's Raisin Bran. Hooked up and in command, they're working now, but they're thinking how they love 2 scoops and Golden Flakes are bland. 2 scoops, they're turning back again for 2 scoops of plump, juicy raisins in Kellogg's Raisin Bran. 2 scoops.
All units advance to the base of the hill.
He was a courageous, dedicated soldier, fighting more than one battle.
Our people will rise up from one end of the country to the other and push the French back into the sea.
Against more than one enemy.
What was your job at headquarters?
Division historian.
I need fighters, not historians.
Don't miss Anthony Quinn in Lost Command, Tuesday night on Superstation WTBS.
Few people build their homes on buttes in North Dakota, but when Rick Maxner returned to the southwest corner of the state where he was born, he liked the sense of privacy the butte provided, so he built his house here. In North Dakota, those few who choose to live here cherish their privacy and yet still cooperate with one another and trust each other, sometimes to an extraordinary degree.
I have a neighbor that leaves for the winter and leaves the keys in his car. And he says, well, somebody might need it. He leaves a can of gas sitting out because somebody might need it. In that respect, people are different. They trust each other. Probably it'd be summed up in a bumper sticker that I once saw, and that was that 40 degrees below zero, it keeps the riffraff out. The people that live here are here because they want to be here. It isn't the place they can make the most money. They have some attachments to the land or to their jobs, and they're here because they like it here.
Rick Maxner, state legislator, farmer. He knows North Dakotans.
They feel productive. They own something. You know, I can say that I own this house, this piece of land that I'm on. I can make it productive. I think a lot of the population of North Dakota feels that way.
Rick's grandfather homesteaded land in this rolling corner of North Dakota near the Badlands. Rick was born here, left to be a Navy pilot in Vietnam, and a successful corporate executive in Minneapolis. But this land and the farmer's way of life drew him back. Now Rick, his father, and his 2 teenage children raise wheat and a few sunflowers. They will harvest today if conditions are right.
Just checking to see how easy that it thrashes. I think we can combine most any time. This time of the year, what we've been hoping for the rest of the year, we don't want, and that's moisture. It'll just wipe out a whole year's work if it rains at the wrong time of the year.
Farming is both an individual and a cooperative effort. The Maxner family must work together to harvest the wheat and make their yearly paycheck. North Dakotans have given cooperation a larger meaning as well. There's a higher per capita membership in cooperatives in this state than in any other. More people belong to food co-ops, gas co-ops, electrical co-ops, cooperatives of all kinds here in North Dakota. Near the Maxner farm in this small town called New England, there's a line of grain elevators. The elevator that receives Rick Maxner's grain is the Farmers Cooperative. As a member of the cooperative, Rick will share in the profits made marketing his grain. Grain cooperatives began in North Dakota because the farmers felt they were being cheated by out-of-state grain merchants. Short weights and unfair quality ratings were suspected. So the North Dakota farmers began in the 1920s to band together and do it themselves. When the grain is weighed and tested for protein levels, Rick is confident the results are fair.
Yep.
Don Horner enjoys his job as manager of this elevator, even though he once had a dream of a farm of his own.
To be a good elevator manager, you have to have a lot of interest in your work, sympathize with the farmer, know where he's coming from when he comes in. He's down, why are grain prices so low? He comes in, just got hailed out. What's the future for him? You have to know why he feels that way, what's happening. Your elevator depends on whether he gets a crop or not.
I got hailed out. Slick and clean.
You have some winter wheat that was ready to go, you lose that?
Yeah. Lost everything in the grains.
Just work it under and wait for... You have crop insurance, hail insurance?
Had a little. Not enough.
Never won't meet the
Never is enough.
expenses on it.
Never is enough. start cutting corners. Hope your credit's good for spring. That's about all you can do. Well, it's one of those things, if you can't handle it, you better not be in the business. You know us. Ever so often you get kicked in the head. You just got to get up and go again.
The farming community around New England got a pretty good kick in the head in 1981 when the Milwaukee line went bankrupt and pulled up the tracks leading into town. The grain elevators were left without railroad cars to ship the grain. But cooperation provided an answer. The New England Co-op, along with other local grain co-ops, had anticipated the problem. They pooled their resources and built a huge grain terminal on the main Burlington Northern line in Gladstone, 35 miles away. Grain is trucked from the local co-ops, like New England, to the Gladstone terminal. The grain is tested for quality once again, and then stored in a 447,000 bushel elevator to make large lots which can be loaded onto what the Burlington Northern calls unit trains, 26 or 52 cars loaded at once, destined for one buyer. It's economical and the only efficient way to get service from the railroad. The railroad was here before the state.
There's only one Super Bowl of cereal, and there's only one taste that makes it the super taste of Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Just think of crispy golden flakes.
Delicious, crunchy flakes of corn.
So pure and simple, just can't wait.
Low in sugar, loaded with vitamins and iron.
So good for you, don't hesitate.
For a Super Bowl of our most nutritious corn flakes ever.
What a Super Bowl. Have yourself a Super Bowl. Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Super taste, super good. Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Uh-oh, here comes Michael. His mother's never tried Charmin. Watch me get her.
Oh, what's this?
Charmin. It must have slipped into his little hands. Haven't you ever tried it?
No. Is it soft?
Squeeze it.
Oh, it is soft.
And?
And cushiony.
And?
And squeezable.
Gotcha. See? Just squeeze the Charmin, and I got you.
Charmin. The squeezing gets you. The softness keeps you.
When I think how much smarter we are today about what we eat, the foods my kids are growing up on, I love it. Leaner, less fat, good changes. Like Louis Rich cold cuts, up to 95% fat-free, because they're made with turkey. Why not? It's the naturally lean meat. Louis Rich has done it. A whole line of great-tasting, lean cold cuts. What a good idea for today.
Louis Rich has what you want today.
Thursday night, Madigan is out to get the job done.
Oh, Madigan's a good cop, Tony. Doesn't always go by the book.
Richard Whitmark is Madigan. Then stay tuned for Omar Sharif as one of China's greatest conquerors.
Born a slave I never was. Born to rule the Yasugai was always in my stars.
Genghis Khan, an exciting double feature, Thursday night on Superstation WTBS.
The tracks still run into the small town of Judd in southeastern North Dakota. But the Burlington Northern wants to take them away. Towns like Judd grew up around the many branch rail lines laid like a web across the state after the turn of the century. In a sense, Judd stands for every small town in North Dakota. Small towns that were created by the railroad and the hard work of immigrants. Today, they must find a way to live without the trains. Rail line abandonment began seriously in the 1970s, and now the Burlington Northern has asked the federal government to allow the abandonment of the branch line through Judd. Only about 100 people live in town, but the larger community includes 200 farm families who bring their grain to the co-op elevator. The railroad has been vital for the farmers. And when some communities this size have lost their branch line, they have withered away to become ghost towns. The people of Judd have been writing letters to try to keep the line. But regardless of the outcome, there is a certain spirit here, a spirit of cooperation and survival, which will prevail. It's the spirit that settled this state, and you can find it any morning on Main Street in the Judd Cafe. The cafe is the social center of Judd. Farmers come here for their morning coffee and a chance to visit with neighbors. The cafe draws the whole community into the town and keeps it alive. But last year, Judd almost lost the cafe. The owners couldn't make a profit and planned to abandon the spot. 20 or so of the ladies of Judd banded together to run the restaurant as a community cafe. To keep the coffee flowing, the ladies agreed to volunteer their time, cooking, cleaning, and waiting on tables. They keep only tips for their labor and give much of this small change back to the cafe as donations.
No, we don't get any wages at all. We just work in here just to keep it going. That's all. Well, I think it helps the community. Brings in more people. I think every town should have a cafe.
Marion Zundell organizes the cafe business.
You know, it takes the whole community to run a restaurant like this. And Judd is the type of community that the people really work together to keep it going. And that's what you need, you know. And if you wouldn't have the full cooperation of the community, there's no way that this cafe would be able to operate like it does.
The ladies have also written to protest the abandonment of the branch rail line to Judd.
When you've got people working together and as hard as this community has worked, I feel that they need every chance they can get. And like without the railroad, it's really going to hurt the farmers. It's going to hurt the elevator. We can't afford to lose our elevator. We don't have enough business places to begin with. I mean, you know, so we have to keep all of them intact.
The cafe is part of Judd's new mini mall, which has a bank and grocery store. More conveniences to attract farmers and keep the town alive. To build the mini mall, the people formed a community development corporation and convinced a bank to finance their efforts and then rent space in the mall for a branch office.
Yeah.
Pete Brunmeyer, the blacksmith, has lived in Judd all his life. He serves the farmers who come to bring their grain to the co-op elevator and drop by his shop on Main Street to get their equipment fixed.
I'll have to say this town has hung on where a lot of them went under, and a lot bigger than this. We've hung on darn good here.
Pete has felt the effects of the declining rail service.
They don't want to serve the small towns, that's what's happening. Good grief. You go over there, the elevator's full of grain, and they come once a week or so, they bring a couple of cars, and they load them, and that's it. No, and they quit freight. I can't get no local freight or nothing anymore like we used to. And the farmers can't get nothing shipped in. If they want to get something, it has to be by trucking.
When you see the shape the tracks are in, the Burlington Northern's plan to tear up the branch line makes more sense. These rails were laid in 1905, and it takes the freight trains 2 or 3 days to make the round trip up the branch line and back. Unit trains on the main line are much more profitable. But without the railroad, Judd will have to move all its grain by truck, heavy trucks that are tearing up the county roads already.
What's going to hurt more if they take out the freight line is our roads. If we truck everything out of here, it's going to be rough on our roads. That's the only thing I hate to see.
Despite its spirit, Judd rests on a fragile economic base. A base made of grain when the farmers can get it to market. The Interstate Commerce Commission will decide about the railroad's plan to abandon the line before winter. But all of Judd has come together this fall day to celebrate and dedicate the new mini mall. it's time to have a kiddie parade down Main Street. Naturally, it's not the cats in a cage or the spider girl that wins the parade, but the two-headed man, two boys stuffed together in the same pants, so they must cooperate or fall down.
Here are Brett and Brandon Boy, two-headed men.
In November, the Interstate Commerce Commission granted the Burlington Northern's request to abandon the line to Judd. No one was surprised, since the commission had granted over 90% of the previous requests for branch line abandonment. But life still goes on in Judd, and they are loading the few last cars before the tracks are pulled up in the spring. The railroad was here before Judd, and it is certain Judd will survive for some time after the railroad is gone. The people are like the immigrants from the steppes of the old world. They survived best in North Dakota because they could adapt to a remote land of extremes. Nothing was ever lost through an enduring faith in North Dakotans. I'm Hal Holbrook. Join us again for Portrait of America.
Portrait of America has been brought to you by Charmin Bathroom Tissue. It's so cushiony, so squeezably soft. And softness is what Charmin's all about. Sugar-free Kool-Aid soft drink mix, the one sugar-free for kids. Kellogg's Crispix, the cereal with corn on one side and rice on the other. Only Crispix is crispy ×2. And by Cable News Network and CNN Headline News.
Coming up next on Superstation WTBS, live fast-action baseball excitement as the Atlanta Braves take on the San Francisco Giants. Then the actions out west on High Chaparral, followed by Our Finite World, reaching the outer